We have shown that when we put in the work and when we talk to voters about what is at stake, they are with us and they will show up for us. In Michigan in 2022, when we framed this election around abortion, we had young voters showing up double digits above the national average. We get a younger, more diverse, more democratic electorate because people agree with us on this issue. They're on our side.
Hello, and welcome to the Politics Girl podcast. I'm your host, Lee McGowan. Let's get into it. Every day, this country seems to inflict a fresh new injury on the rights and freedoms of American women. Since the overturning of Roe v. Wade, the doors have been swung wide open for what feels like every and all form of draconian law that are far less about life than they are about control. In the 2 years since the U.S. Supreme Court overturned the federal right to an abortion, restrictions on the healthcare procedure have exploded across the country, particularly in the American South. We're at a place where 1 out of 3 American women of childbearing years now lives in a state with an abortion ban. To add to this crisis, reproductive rights opponents are looking to ban the most common form of abortion care, the abortion pill mifepristone, at the Supreme Court, including some anti-abortion activists using the archaic 1873 Comstock Act, which outlaws mailing obscene materials through the mail and applying it to the abortion drug. There are people that are considering even arguing that contraception itself should be added to the ban. Combine this extreme behavior with the rise in blatant Christian nationalism that would seemingly prefer women out of the workplace and back barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen, and you realize that 51% of women in this country, and the men who respect them, really need to be voting with deliberation this fall. To talk about the importance of electing women who understand the stakes facing American women right now, today's guest is the new president of Emily's List, the nation's largest resource for women in politics, Jessica Mackler. After Emily's List's previous president, LaFonza Butler, was tapped to be the sitting senator for California until the 2024 election when Dianne Feinstein's seat could be permanently filled, Emily's List board of directors unanimously chose Jessica to be the organization's next president. A veteran political strategist, Jessica started her career as an intern at Emily's List. She went on to be a staffer and spent 2 election cycles traveling all over the country helping elect women to office. Jessica returned to Emily's List in 2021 after spending nearly a decade working in all levels of campaigns across the country. She served as the president of American Bridge 21st Century and ran the independent expenditure operations for the Democratic Governor Association and Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. Jessica was also the co-founder of one of the only women-run opposition research firms in the country and was put on the Politico Women to Watch Power list. She is known as someone who likes to play to win, and at a time where we really need to win, I am so pleased she's on this team. So without further ado, please welcome my guest, organizer, strategist, and now president of Emily's List, Jessica Mackler. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my God, thank you for joining me and congratulations on your new position. We actually had LaFonza on the show a number of times, but most memorably, she came on the show the day Roe v. Wade was overturned, the day the Dobbs decision came down. And I can't tell you how important that was for me at the time because I was like, in shock. I feel the same way today that I felt 2 years ago, and it wasn't sad. It was angry. I really feel rage. I feel this deep injustice is being inflicted on American women by one political party, and it makes me feel honestly outraged. What our Supreme Court, our state houses, and yes, the Republican Party are doing to American women right now is unbelievable, and something needs to be done immediately to reverse this damage and also protect us moving forward.
Absolutely. I mean, this is, and what you're speaking to, I think, is what people all over the country are feeling, and women in particular are feeling, right? Because they, in one foul swoop, and it certainly was a buildup, they had a plan for this over time. And so it was the culmination of that plan, and that's still ongoing. But they ripped away from millions of women across the country this fundamental freedom that we had relied on. And I think for a lot of us who grew up at a time where this was a guaranteed right, it is devastating, but it is more than that. To your point, it is such an outrage and it makes us so mad. And that's fueling what we're seeing across the country too, though, is that people are saying, okay, I have to do something because I will not stand for this.
Yeah, it's mobilizing in a way.
Absolutely. And I think that that's what we're also seeing is that, and we have 6 months ahead of us, this election, and we always say, oh, it's the most consequential election of our lives. But it really keeps being more and more true.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing is that the only way that we're really going to be able to restore these rights and fight back is by securing power.
Yeah. I mean, it is the most consequential election of our lifetime because the stakes keep getting higher. We're not just saying that because, it's a thing to say. I mean, truly the stakes continue to grow. I mean, obviously your mission is electing Democratic pro-choice women is more essential than ever right now. This reversal of Roe opened up just a Pandora's box of some of the worst legislation across the country. And the Republicans aren't even pretending that they're not going to put in a national abortion ban if they get back into power in 2024. So how does it feel to lead an organization like this at a time like this?
Well, I have to tell you, it's a real range and mix of emotions about it, right? I mean,
I bet.
it is. On one hand, this is an organization actually where I started my career. So my entire career in politics has been rooted in the idea of how do we elect women? What are the barriers they face? How do we overcome them? So there is, on one hand, it feels like this really special full circle moment for me, and to be able to do it, as you said, at a moment where the mission is more important than ever. But then at the same time, it feels really weighty because we know that the stakes are so high, and because we're seeing the consequences all over the country. And that is the part, when you are in this political business for a long time, you can get a little bit cynical. But when every few weeks we're hearing about another devastating consequence of what Republicans are doing all over the country, or you're hearing about some other way that they are trying to come after us, it does it feels weighty, and it's a huge responsibility. And I don't take that lightly at all.
No. And I think we should talk about what's going on around the country. I mean, if you look at the country right now, obviously a lot of states have just completely banned abortion. There's really huge hoops for women to have to jump through, even in states that don't have it banned. But right now in Louisiana, the Senate is considering legislation that would classify abortion drugs, mifepristol, as controlled substances with penalties of up to 10 years in prison and $15,000 in fines. And Cecile Richards, who is the former head of Planned Parenthood, has done a lot of work down there trying to draw attention to this crisis and pointing out that hundreds of Louisiana doctors have come forward to plead with these Republican lawmakers on behalf of their patients, explaining that this proposal would really put people's health and lives at risk. And I think we really need to be very clear that Louisiana's abortion bans have already dangerously disrupted pregnancy care in that state. Yeah. And this new proposal is just an extra layer of outrageous, right? Mifepristone has been around for almost 30 years. It's on the World Health Organization's list of essential medications. To qualify it as basically a street drug is ludicrous, right? You have 200 doctors publicly signing a letter saying this is absolutely outrageous. It's going to cause our patients harm. It's going to really hurt these women. And miscategorizing a drug like this that is routinely safe and used in labor units throughout the country is setting another dangerous precedent. And we have to be really clear that this isn't just oh, we're banning abortion. They are taking every little step everywhere to try and make it harder for women to control their own reproductive rights, to control their own bodies. I mean, these drugs are over-the-counter medications in other countries. And then to add insult to injury in Louisiana, the Republicans have also refused to listen to rape survivors. So they have their bill there, their abortion bill, and the Democrats tried to put in some exceptions for rape and incest, and it wasn't going to happen. So the Democrats were like, okay, how about exceptions for rape and incest just of children, just of babies? They had testimony of 2 8-year-olds who were raped and impregnated, and the Republicans were like, nope, no exceptions for even babies. So they are forcing children, no exceptions, to carry their rapist babies. And if I could quote Cecile Richards again, she's like, we need to stop this idea that these laws that they're trying to put in are there to protect women or advance health or safety, because they are doing the exact opposite. People are dying. People are undergoing unnecessary surgeries. They're experiencing unfathomable cruelty. 8-year-olds carrying their rapist babies to term, come on. And then they're being denied essential health care. So we need to stop pretending that this is anything other than that.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that you said there that is really at the heart of this is that it is about control.
Yes.
They have shown this is not about, we think Roe was wrongly decided, it should belong to the state. That is not what this is. This is about control. And Republicans have shown that they are going to take this fight in every state, every locality, every place that they can go, whether it's a national abortion ban, whether it's tracking people's movements, whether it's telling people that they have to bleed out in emergency rooms until they're on the brink of death to get access to care. These are the stories that we're seeing across the country, but it's because it's about control. And then the other piece of it, and to your point, when we talk about 8-year-old children, I mean, you and I both have kids. I have a 6 and a 10-year-old. When we are talking about 8-year-old children having to go through what they are going through, it's cruel. And that is the consequence of the Dobbs decision. And it's the consequence of what Republicans are trying to do across the country. And I'm just so glad that you are, they're shining a light on this. But we have to be really intentional and consistent in making sure that people are hearing about what's happening across the country. And it's so awful that sometimes you want to look away, but we can't look away. We don't have that luxury because the people who are dealing with these consequences don't have that.
No, listen, I mean, I was, looking at what was going on around the states just in preparation for this conversation. And just in the last kind of couple of weeks, the stuff that you're looking at, I mean, like, there's a woman in Florida, her name is Deborah Dobert, and she was denied an abortion after finding out she was carrying a child who had Potter syndrome. And for people who don't know Potter syndrome, the child has no kidneys and their lungs are not developing at all. So her doctor was like, this child won't survive. You're most likely going to miscarry. This is how it works. And he couldn't end her pregnancy under Florida's law. So they said, you can wait to miscarry or you can go out of state and get it. And she was scared. She was scared that if she went to another state, she would be breaking the law. She didn't have the money really to go to another state. So she and her husband just decided to go through with the birth. And it was an absolute nightmare. So this woman, Deborah, she was forced to give birth to the baby. Then she was forced to watch it gasp for air, which it couldn't get because it doesn't have lungs properly, for 94 minutes until it died. This child was never going to survive. The state just let this baby suffer and die while the parents watched helplessly, while the doctors watched helplessly. We wouldn't do that to a dog. We put our dogs down. Like, what we're doing to women and children in America right now is outrageous. There was another woman in Tennessee. Her name is Brianna Cecil. She was denied an abortion after learning that the fetus she was carrying suffered this severe fetal abnormality where the brain was not attached. The brain was not attached. And the abortion law in Tennessee prohibited her from having an abortion. And her doctor was like, you're just going to have to wait until you miscarry and you're going to deliver a stillborn baby and it might affect your long-term reproduction. So she and her husband left the state. They left the state after a lot of deliberation and they traveled out of state to get an abortion. But because they waited so long, she had complications. So by the time she got back, she wasn't getting follow-up care because she wasn't in her state. And now she has lost her ovary and one of her fallopian tubes. And if the care had been done earlier with medical follow-ups, this wouldn't have happened, right? And she's now blaming the state of Tennessee, rightly, for taking her fertility from her. She wanted a huge biological family. If this is about life and about doing this kind of stuff, she's now not going to get one. So, and I just want to drive this point home to people. This is just a couple situations this past couple of weeks. And this isn't about the people of Louisiana or Florida or Tennessee. It's about what the Republicans and what the Trump administration are promising to bring to all of us, the entire country, if they get back into power.
That's absolutely right. And I mean, Donald Trump has come out numerous times taking credit for appointing the court that overturned Roe. And when he says, this is for the states, this is what we're seeing when this is in the states. It is devastating consequences for people across the country. But we also know that it's not going to stop there. They've been very clear that if they're elected, they will pass a national abortion ban. And we talk a lot about a national abortion ban, but as we're seeing, it's also, they're not going to stop there.
No.
They are going to keep doing this until they control every aspect of women's bodies, whether we're talking about access to IVF, whether we're talking about medication, like you said, safe medical procedures. And so we're living in this reality right now. We don't have to wonder what it's going to be about, but we also know that we have this opportunity that's in front of us. And if we can seize back power, we can restore these rights. And that is really the only way we're going to restore these rights.
Yeah, it's like they say, if it took them, 40 plus years to reverse Roe, we could fix this in 2. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we really
Yeah.
could do this. So clearly Democratic pro-choice women have to win across the country. We have to protect the Senate and flip the House along with keeping the presidency. But as we watch these states and the power they have to destroy people's lives, obviously your candidates also have to win in critical state and local elections across the country. So tell me Emily's List strategy. Tell me this strategy. You're well known as a tactician and organizational leader. You were voted in unanimously by your board because they felt that no one was more prepared to lead this organization at this particularly vicious phase, honestly, of American politics. So tell me the plan.
The framework of this plan is first and foremost, we have to win elections, right? We have to take back power and we have to take it back at every level of government. So we have to win at the top of the ticket. We've endorsed the vice president. That's kind of our lens on how we help win and retain the presidency. We have to hold the United States Senate. There are going to be Emily's List Democratic pro-choice women at the heart of that, women like Tammy Baldwin and Jackie Rosen and Alyssa Slotkin. And we just had a big victory last week. Angela Alsobrooks won her Democratic primary in Maryland. We were heavily invested in that race. She's going to be a huge champion for reproductive freedom. Opportunities in Florida, like Debbie Merkersell-Powell. We can hold power in the Senate. We can take back the House. We can secure state legislative majorities, whereas we've seen this fight is playing out every day. And that's how we're going to take back power. But the way we do that, the strategy to do that, and what we've seen work in every election since the Dobbs decision, it's hard, but it's simple. We need to put this choice in front of voters at every juncture, and we need to do that consistently through Election Day. We often say here at Emily's List that the issue of reproductive freedom, the issue of abortion rights, it is powerful, but it's not necessarily organic. And so the work that we do directly with our campaigns and helping make sure they understand how to talk about this, with investment that we make in these races, we spent $34 million in 2022 talking about abortion rights in battleground states and won 2/3 of those races. We have to put a consistent choice in front of voters and say, this is what this election is about. If you elect Donald Trump, you will get a national abortion ban. If you turn power in the Senate over to Republicans, we will get a national abortion ban. If we do not secure power in Arizona, they will still be living with a 15-week abortion ban. Those are the choices that are in front of voters. But when we do that, we win. And honestly, that's what makes me more optimistic than I've ever been, which is that we have shown that when we put in the work and when we talk to voters about what is at stake, they are with us and they will show up for us. You know, in Michigan in 2022, when we framed this election around abortion, we had young voters showing up double digits above the national average. We get a younger, more diverse, more democratic electorate because people agree with us on this issue. They're on our side.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think people can see that what's happening to American women is unacceptable. And I think a lot of people are ready to sort of dig in and fight back because we actually have to do it incredibly hard. Like you said, these people are not coming for just abortion. These archaic laws are coming in to mess with IVF, to access to contraception. We're talking about child marriage now. We're like throwing back life to the 1700s. And I think a lot of people are like, I'm not doing that. I think that's why we want to get more young people involved because, you know, younger women are facing way fewer rights than the generations before them, and that should feel intolerable to them. And we have to make sure that they understand what's on the line, because I know that there's stories now that a lot of women don't even know what's going on in their states until they need care, and then they find out they can't get it. Like that's a big thing in Florida right now because you get your news from Fox, you don't realize that the law's changed, and then all of a sudden they go in with like an emergency situation and they're like, what do you mean I can't? What do you mean you can't treat me? You know? And so we really need to make sure that they keep hearing the actual story, the actual facts, like you said, putting it in front of them consistently and saying, this is what needs to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to see, I mean, it's not just access to abortion medication, it's going to be access to contraception.
Yeah.
And so, you know, for people who grew up, and certainly I grew up in an environment, I grew up in California in a time when if you needed emergency contraception, you needed contraception, you needed abortion care, those were things that were available to you. And so if you are growing up as a generation where this has always been in the backdrop as something that you could rely on and not something that you have to worry about, and it's not necessarily on your radar screen, and this isn't what you're paying attention to day in and day out, then it is going to be a wild shock to you. And so we need to make sure that people are hearing about that before they need care. And in the lead up to this election so that they have an opportunity to exercise their rights. And we've seen that when we do that, like I said, you look at even in places like Kansas and Kentucky, red states, blue states, really anywhere you go that you are talking about abortion rights, reproductive freedom, and what's at stake in this election in those terms, we win.
Yeah. I mean, Alabama recently had an election where the polls had the Republican up by 5 points and the Democrat ran on a platform of reproductive rights. They won by 26 points, right? There was just a special election in New York that had the Democrat up by 5, and he won by 35 points by being unapologetically pro-reproductive rights. I mean, this right to healthcare, the right to an abortion, this ability to decide what happens to your own body, what you're going to do with your own family. That is a winning issue for people. People don't want the government involved with that. And we have to make sure that people understand that. We have to keep reminding people that the Republicans who are talking about being pro-life are not pro-life. They are forced birth. They are against universal health care and living wages. They vote to get rid of school lunches and social programs. They're anti-unions, so the worker can't fight for better wages or working conditions that would allow them to be, say, better parents, right? They're anti-environment, anti-public education, anti-science, and now they're pro-child labor, right? These positions that they have are literally toxic to most of the electorate, and yet they still win elections. So we have to make sure that people really understand what's on the line. Support for today's episode comes from OneSkin. And if you have sensitive skin, you're going to want to hear about their scientifically proven topical supplements. Free from over 1,500 chemicals and preservatives that can make your skin red or irritated or itchy, their products are safe for sensitive skin. And if you have sensitive skin, you know how hard it can be to find a product that doesn't cause irritation. But OneSkin's topical supplements are formulated with soothing ingredients and natural antioxidants that are gentle enough for everyday use. Founded by an all-woman team of scientists, OneSkin's products are backed by an extensive lab and clinical data to validate their success and safety on all skin types. Not only that, they're the first and only skin longevity company to target cellular sentience, a key hallmark of aging. Their topical supplements are the easiest way to keep your skin healthy and hydrated without all the harsh ingredients or irritation often found in other skincare products. I've been using their sunscreen, OS1 Shield. OneSkin's products are powered by this scientifically proven peptide called OS1. This peptide reduces the accumulation of damaged, aging cells, the ones that make your skin less resilient and more prone to lines and wrinkles. OneSkin has a full line of face and body products, including Shield, which is an SPF that prevents UV-induced aging and repairs cellular aging all at once. I have to wear it every single day. My son likes to take the top off his car, and I was getting burnt just sitting in it. I love it. It is smooth, easily absorbable, and with someone with sensitive skin, I've had absolutely no trouble with it. So try it for yourself. OneSkin is the world's first skin longevity company, and by focusing on the cellular aspects of aging, they keep your skin looking and acting younger for longer. Get started today with 15% off using the code PoliticsGirl at oneskin.co. That's 15% off at oneskin.co with the code PoliticsGirl. And after you purchase, if they ask you where you heard about them, please support the show and tell them that we sent you. Help your skin stay younger and healthier for longer with OneSkin. Today's podcast is sponsored by Sundays for Dogs. Well, my golden doodle Chips just had his 9th birthday. My boy is 9. And we have spent all 9 years of his life dealing with his sensitive stomach and his picky eating habits. But I can tell you in all honesty, this kid loves Sundays for Dogs. Sundays for Dogs is a fresh dog food made from a short list of human-grade ingredients. It was co-founded by a practicing veterinarian who tests and formulates every version of each recipe. Sundays contains 90% meat, 10% superfoods, and 0% synthetic nutrients or artificial ingredients. And unlike other fresh dog foods, Sundays doesn't require refrigeration or preparation because of their air drying process, so you can just pour and serve. And as my husband always points out, it doesn't smell weird or like crazy potent when you open the bag. And honestly, if I'm talking about the bag, I know this sounds stupid, but the bag itself seals up so easily after you've used it. I don't know why every other company in the flippin' world can't figure out the sealing, but it is a pleasure every single time to open a Sundays for Dogs bag. Sundays for Dogs makes feeding your dog so easy. Chips likes the beef, he likes the chicken, his stomach seems normal and settled. The whole transition to this food has been so impressive. Plus, I'm not making as much garbage with the canned food, and it's delivered to my home on a reoccurring order, so I'm making far fewer trips to the vet for their specialty food, and they have terrible, terrible parking. So if you want to try this terrific food for your dog, go to sundaysfordogs.com/politicsgirl and get 40% off your first order. That's sundaysfordogs.com/politicsgirl and use the code politicsgirl to check out for 40% off. Because I know your dog is just as special to you as Chips is to me. And these guys deserve food that's not only good for them, but that they want to eat. sundaysfordogs.com/politicsgirl. We have to make sure that people really understand what's on the line.
That's absolutely true. And that is really the work that Emily's List has been doing since the Dobbs decision. And even before that, actually it was in early 2021 that we first started talking about how the attacks that were coming on abortion rights and the potential fall of Roe had the power to change the fortunes of Democratic candidates across the country. Everyone thought back in 2021 that we were going to have this massive red wave, that Democrats were doomed. And we said, no, this is going to spark outrage in people across the country. This is a fundamental freedom and people are going to react to that. And it took a long time for people to buy into that strategy. It was really a long, painstaking process. But when we did the work and we put the money behind it and we proved our case, and now I think what I am encouraged by is that we have people really on the same page here. We saw that in the Virginia elections. We were able to flip the state House of Delegates and hold the Senate there, protecting abortion rights in Virginia, because we were all very disciplined in talking about what was at stake in that election. And so we've really proven the case on how we can do this. And I said this earlier, but it's really important. Remember, it's hard, but it's simple. And so that is what is great for us. I know it can be, I feel like if you're out there and you're like, okay, we're waging these same fights again and again and again, it can be discouraging. But I would really say that, we should take heart and be encouraged by the fact that we've seen that when we do this work, we win. And so we know that we just need to do the work.
Yeah.
It's hard, but it's simple.
Yeah, no, and absolutely. And I think we just have to be consistent and go over and over and over again what our intentions are. I mean, someone very cleverly online said, the so-called pro-life movement is based on lies. And you have to keep reminding people of that, because they're casting abortion as some sort of one-size-fits-all birth control, instead of what it is, which is healthcare, right? It ignores the fact that the fetus isn't a baby. It ignores the fact that the fetus is using the body of another person to stay alive. It ignores the fact that DNCs are necessary care for miscarriages, ectopic pregnancies, post-pregnancy complications. This blanket criminalization, it just puts American lives at risk. There's a woman named Leila Cohen, and she said, we have to remember, if it was just about babies, we would have excellent and free universal maternal care in this country. It wouldn't cost a cent to give birth, no matter how complicated your delivery was. If it was about babies, we would have months of parental leave for everyone. If it was about babies, we would have free lactation consultants and free diapers and free formula. If it was about babies, we would have free and excellent childcare from being a newborn on. If it was about babies, we would have universal preschool, pre-K, guaranteed school placements, but we don't, because it's not about babies or women or life. It's about power, like you said, it's about control, and quite frankly, it's about religion. And that's what we're also talking about. This sort of, religion part comes in with getting rid of contraception. There's been this huge uptick in America lately to kind of essentially push women back into the role of a dependent Holly homemaker, baby maker. And I think we have to make sure that American women and the men that love them and don't want that for them all really get what's on the line.
Absolutely. And I mean, some of these proposals that we see coming out of states, it sounds like something out of an apocalyptic sci-fi novel, or it's a Handmaid's Tale. It's reality right now. And so we really have to make sure that people are seeing and hearing about this. But also one thing that I've found is that it is really intuitive for people, right? And I think that's because it is about something that feels so fundamental. And so when we talk about what's happening and we say, here's what's going on in Tennessee or Louisiana or Alabama, that people, once it's in front of them, they are really understand what it will mean for them, and also kind of the ramifications down the road. If they can take away this right, what does that say for all of the other rights that we have? Anything is on the table. And so we're at this kind of critical tipping point moment where we can either claim back that control and make sure that we secure these freedoms, or we can go over the deep end, right? And over that deep end really is a world that it's taking us back, but it's also a world we haven't even really seen before.
Right, right. And I think we can't forget that abortion bans also affect citizens who might never need abortion care because doctors are leaving states with these extremist laws in droves, right? They don't want to practice in states where they're threatened by lawsuits for just doing their job. They want to work in places where their patients have bodily autonomy and they have legal protection. They can't even adhere to the Hippocratic oath of doing no harm if they're forced to make the wrong choices for their patients based on law or calling in the lawyers before you can treat the patient. So they don't want to do it. So we have actual doctor deserts in certain states now where people are like, I don't want to practice here anymore. Like, this isn't what I want to do because it's just not safe for my career or for me.
That's absolutely right. And I mean, this is, the Supreme Court case over the emergency care ban, the idea that, states would be allowed to say that doctors don't have to uphold that oath and that women can bleed out in emergency rooms until they're on the brink of death before they get care. And in many cases, we know that those women are then going to die before they get care. And that, like you said, is something that for doctors, nurses, other professionals is going to be intolerable. We're also going to see people say, I'm not, I don't want to send my kids to college in a state with these bans, or I don't want to live in states with these bans because what does it mean for other healthcare situations? And so the ramifications are going to be far and wide. There are going to be huge economic consequences. We already know that there are economic consequences for women who are dealing with the need for abortion care, but there's also going to be broader consequences for states and localities. And the impacts are wide ranging and devastating.
Yeah, absolutely. It's shocking. I mean, I'm definitely not sending, if I can help it, I'm certainly not sending my son, and he's my son, not my daughter, my son, to a state that has these extreme abortion bans because I don't want him to get into a situation either where,
right.
he ends up as a teenage father or something happens to his girlfriend because of this kind of situation because they can't get proper health care in that state. That's not worth it for me, and it shouldn't be worth it for most people. I mean, you've been quoted saying that it was Emily's List that taught you about the power of standing in the gap between what was real and what was right. Can you tell me what you meant by that?
Yeah, absolutely. And part of that is, taking a step back, Emily's List was founded nearly 40 years ago.
Yep.
And the principle is that the government works better when it looks like the people that it represents. And when we think about the moment that we're in, I don't think we've had better examples of that over the course of those 40 years. You only have to look at what it means to have someone like Senator Tammy Duckworth leading on IVF access, because she went through that. And so we know that we need the perspectives of a diverse set of women at the table when we think about what comes after winning and securing power. And we're talking about restoring these rights. We need to make sure that that's done in the context of the broader Black maternal health crisis. We need to make sure that's done in the context of what does it mean and what matters when it comes to access to IVF, to other medications. If we do not have women at the table with the lived experience, bringing those perspectives to these policy debates, then we are not going to get the true reproductive freedom that women across America deserve. And so, Emily's List, the foundation of that was that, women couldn't get elected because they couldn't raise the money. They didn't look like the type of candidates that were electable. And so Emily's List was created to say, we're going to stand in that gap. We are going to bridge this gap between what is the reality that women candidates are living with and where we need to go if we're going to truly have a government that works in the way that we want it to work and that represents all people. And so the moment that we're in really underscores this urgency around not just winning elections, that is important, but it matters who sits in these seats, right? It's not just a vote in a ledger. It's just not a person in a chair. When we have true leaders, when it comes to a range of issues, reproductive freedom being one of them, it really matters. People like the vice president. Kamala Harris has spent her entire life fighting for reproductive freedom. Her voice on this issue is so critical. And so that's the work of Emily's List. We work with candidates from before they launch their campaigns, through their elections, really there to be a resource for whatever it is that they need, and also to help raise the dollars to combat the narratives around electability and to be the difference makers when it comes to getting them elected. And I mentioned this earlier, we were so thrilled with a win that we had just last week with Angela Alsobrooks, who is from Maryland, Prince George's County executive, is going to be only the fourth Black woman to serve in the United States Senate when elected and has the lived experience, has been a champion for women and families her entire life. And people said that she couldn't win in that primary election because she was up against a guy that said he'd spend $60 million, and he did. But Emily's List was there with her on day two. That's the kind of race that we're built for. And that's, to me, what it means to deliver on that promise of standing in the gap between what's real and what's right.
Yeah, and combating that narrative of like who can be a leader and showing
Yeah.
that it can be the people that need to be at the table more often, because we've lost a lot of our voices over time. And we really can see now we really, really need women's voices at the table more than anything. I mean, one of the other quotes that I love from you is that you've said you'll do whatever it takes to level the playing field for women. And I think that's so important because it's difficult right now to not look around the country these days without seeing what a disadvantage women are at. Not just the pay gap or the lack of representation in certain industries, not just the extraordinary amount of rapes or the assaults women deal with on a daily basis. I mean, the reason we choose the bear in that, scenario that's been going around on the internet recently, but the fact that our human rights itself are up for debate. I mean, I love men. Well, there's a lot of men that I love, but I don't think men can truly understand how outrageous it is to have your human rights questioned, right? It is absolutely unacceptable, which is why leveling the playing field for women really feels like such a necessity right now.
I mean, we've made so much progress over the last 40 years, but we still see that, only 25% of the United States Senate is women. So, we have a long ways to go. And we still see, from in ways big and small, that women candidates in particular are underestimated. We see an increase in disinformation and misinformation. That is particularly true when it comes to women of color who are running for office. We see that they have a higher, barrier when it comes to raising the dollars still to this day. We see that women are, raised less than their male counterparts most of the time. And so that, gets at just an underlying, sexism and racism that it still exists. And we have to really intentionally work to overcome those barriers. And I started my career at Emily's List. And so as I said, that was really the foundation for me, was that if we're going to engage in this work, let's do it in a way that is about making sure that our government looks more like and reflects the population that it represents, and we're going to get better outcomes. And for us, it really is whatever it takes. When we're working with a campaign and somebody needs to take out the trash, we're taking out the trash. When we need to think through the right finance plan, or we need to help that candidate figure out how to talk about a certain issue, it is really whatever it takes so that they can be successful, because we know that if we elect them, it will matter so much for what's at stake in this country.
Yeah, it will matter so much, because you look at, there are 4 states right now that have restricted divorce during pregnancy. And these are states that have total bans on abortion. So if you talk to domestic violence experts, they're saying, oh, this combination is absolutely deadly. Like the Journal of American College of Surgeons published a study recently that found that states that have restricted abortion access have 75% higher rate of peripartum homicide, or people who are killed while they're pregnant or in the first year of giving birth. And these are states with absolute abortion restrictions. So we are looking at situations where in Missouri, in Texas, in Arkansas, partially in Arizona, where the state law bars judges from finalizing divorces while a person is pregnant. And this is not a decision that women made. This is a decision that male lawmakers made because they do not understand the danger they are putting women in. These kind of laws encourage abusive partners to further isolate the women, to abuse their spouse. It costs people lives. There are people who run domestic violence hotlines who are saying, listen, our calls for reproductive coercion even have gone up almost 100% since the Dobbs ruling. Abusive partners often view pregnancy as a loss of control. There's going to be someone else in the relationship that the woman has to care about except them. And the person will not be completely devoted to them anymore. And so they often end up murdering their spouse. These are laws being passed. These states are not just telling women they have to stay pregnant against their will and tie themselves to their abusive partners forever. But during the pregnancy, they are not allowed to legally divorce their abusive partner. What are we even doing here? We need women at the table saying, absolutely not. This is completely outrageous. It's not just about denying people abortion care. It's about forcing women to stay in abusive relationships because of pregnancy. So I feel like what this goes to show is that What happens when reproductive rights are left to the states without any federal protections and without women in these levels of government to stand up for other women and say, this is absolutely unacceptable? It causes chaos. It causes confusion where women have different human rights from state to state, and it's just not working. It is putting us in danger. It's putting children in danger. It's putting mothers who already have children in danger. And we require federal protection. So we require lawmakers that are going to do that for us.
Again, it just keeps coming back to this idea of control, right? And the foundation of our country is the concept that we should have freedom. And there's nothing more foundational to that freedom than control over our own bodies and an ability to make decisions for ourselves when it comes to matters of our own health and well-being and safety. And so the only way, right, as you said, the only way out of this, because it's not just that we need to, beat back laws in one place or another. It is that we need to secure control and then, and power in government at all levels. And then we need to secure these freedoms at all levels. And that is really our only path forward. And when we talk about how we do that in this election cycle, it is hard, but we have the opportunity to secure a Democratic trifecta at all levels of government.
That means House, Senate, presidency, and then hopefully more state houses.
And then more state houses. I mean, obviously, it's in some places it's a longer journey than in others, but there are certainly states across this country, states like Arizona and Wisconsin and New Hampshire, where we can flip chambers in this election cycle and make a critical difference for women all over the country. And if we secure that trifecta at the national level, then we can enshrine these freedoms into law and make sure that we're able to really, chart a different path for women across the country. And I will say one of the things that I love about working at Emily's List is that we see that, as we said, both the representation of women matters, but also that women candidates are at the heart of every one of those battles, right? So at the top of the ticket, the leadership of Vice President Harris, as we said, really critical. In the Senate, women senators and opportunities to send new women to the Senate are going to be at the heart of holding that majority. And then Democratic pro-choice women have been at the center of the battle for control of the House for many cycles. And that's going to be true in this election cycle as well. And in these states, we have Democratic pro-choice women that we have recruited that are running for office that can flip these chambers and are a critical part of that as well. And so it is going to be Democratic pro-choice women that are going to lead us out of this. And that's, that's the mission, as you said. It's more important than ever.
Yeah. So tell me what you need from us. What can we do to help Emily's List defeat this growing, what I would say is anti-woman movement across America?
Absolutely. Well, when we talk about when Emily's List was created, the whole idea was that a problem that one person would not be able to solve individually, we could solve together. And so we've always been about community and collective power. So my first ask is to join the Emily's List community. You can come to our website. You can see what we're all about. The power that we have as a collective, as a community, is far greater than anything that we could do individually. The other piece that we've already talked about is to continue talking about this, to call out Republican lies where you hear and see them, to talk with your friends and your relatives and your neighbors about this issue. It can feel a little scary, but the truth is, we see people are overwhelmingly on our side. And so when we have these conversations, those conversations are particularly powerful when it's not about some slick political, conversation. It's about just, person to person, what is at stake. So those are two things. And then support the candidates who, like I said, are going to be our path out of this. That is work that we all need to do together. And when we all do our own part, whether it's large or small, we've seen that we win. Like I said, it's hard, but it's simple.
Yeah. It seems like this is the moment Emily's List was built to meet, right? I mean, as you pointed out, it was a generation of pissed off women that got together and founded Emily's List over 40 years ago. And it'll be a generation of pissed off women who use the power of this organization to really fight back now. And I hope that the men of America who aren't complete misogynist ridiculousness, who listen to NFL guys making speeches about how we should stay in the kitchen, will help us use the power of this organization that has been built for this moment to do this now. So I want to thank you so much for joining us today, Jessica. We clearly can't carry on like this. And I'm so pleased that someone with your fight is willing to take it on.
Well, I am honored to get to do it. And I'm just thrilled that we're all in it together. People showing up to do this work together has been what has encouraged me and given me hope through the last few years. And we're going to win. We're going to win and we're going to do it together.
We're freaking going to win. I'm telling you, we're absolutely going to win. So that was Jessica Mackler reminding us to be consistent and intentional. that fixing this crisis is hard, but it's also simple. We have to keep talking about this, to continue to put this issue in front of voters every single day. We can't stop talking about how outrageous it is to strip freedom and autonomy from our citizens like this, or the slippery slope we're on if we accept that government can just take our essential human rights. At the end of the day, it's not just about abortion. It's about precedent. What can they take next if they can take this now? Emily's List is out here fighting back, not just dedicated to winning elections at every level, but to supporting those winners once they're in office. We know government works better when it looks like the people it represents, when all voices are truly represented at the table. So let's get them there. I want to thank Jessica for joining us and you for caring enough about democracy to be here. Now go join the Emily's List community and help them help us. Until next week, PG out. The Politics Girl podcast is written and performed by me, Lee McGowan, in partnership with the Midas Media Network, and produced and edited by Happy Warrior Entertainment. All rights reserved.